Welcome back, guys. Now, oil pressure. Without it, our engines wouldn't last very long. Today we're going to be looking at a few modifications that we've made to our Classic Mini to give ourselves the ability to modify and monitor oil pressure, which should help our engine last a little bit longer. Let's go and take a look. On our standard Mini, there's no oil pressure gauge. So the first thing I've done is gone and bought an oil pressure gauge from MED and fitted it in the cabin. So now, when we run the car, we've got the ability to see what our oil pressure is. And it's probably going to be wrong. So after we've found out how wrong it is, we need to move on to step 2, which is a way to adjust it. It is a Resto 2-in-1 gauge that does oil pressure and also coolant temperature. I've mounted it temporarily on a very cheap gauge mount, and as you can see, the interior is very temporary, just for the summer. But for that summer, I want the ability to know what our oil pressure is doing. Let's go have a little look at the sender unit inside the engine bay. There's a capillary tube that comes off the back of the gauge that I have tucked around the engine bay that comes all the way around, underneath the loom, underneath the front panel, around and into a T-piece in the block, so that when the engine is running, it's registered and monitored from here. Now that we can read our oil pressure, we need the ability to modify it. Enter CAD with their adjustable oil pressure relief valve with Cooper S ball and spring. Now, you can just remove the original oil pressure relief valve and put some washers behind the spring to adjust the pressure. If you want to do that, that's fine. That will cost you nothing. This will cost you in the region of £40, and it is shiny and it looks like a modification. Also, because it's got a bolt built into the end of it, it gives you infinite adjustment. Putting in a washer and then taking it out and putting in a second one and playing around with it, you could be there all day. I've chosen to spend £40 to put a shiny piece on my engine and adjust it. Let's have a look at how we fit it. For reference, this is your original oil pressure relief valve, and this is the kit from CAD, Kent Auto Developments, and this is what it comprises of. The ball bearing, which will sit on a seating inside of the engine, and then you've got a spring, and then a plunger. Plunger's got a lovely little O-ring on it, which will prevent leaks. Nice little copper cross washer, and obviously this is going to replace what we got in the block. We've then got a nylock nut and another copper cross washer, and then we can obviously unwind and wind in this bolt, which in turn will push in the plunger and put more tension on the spring, adjusting our oil pressure. I spoke to CAD on the phone and they said aim for between 70 and 90 PSI from cold, and they say that if I wind the bolt in to the point that it is just seating on the end of the plunger, that will get me somewhere in the ballpark. So that is what I'm going to do. Let's take the old one apart and put it in the bin. This measures up at 1 inch. So we popped an inch socket and a reducer on, and have a little look what's inside. I don't know what we're going to find. But by the looks of it, I'm going to put a little bit of blue roll down. We don't want to make a mess. There we go. So that's under spring tension. So I'm assuming it's going to be the same when we refit. That's going to be a little bit of fun. Inside, we'd have an original spring and the old pressure reducing valve. That's obviously where you'd put your washers in behind there if you were going to do it for free. And I can only assume there's going to be something inside of there. We need to get a magnetic pen in to get it out. There you go. Original plunger that sits on a seating. Now, obviously the size of that seating and the size of the ball bearing are going to be the same. So that will sit down into the seating inside of the block. And then the spring will sit on top of it. And then we'll tighten down. Nice and straightforward. First things first, in goes the ball. And then in goes the spring. A little bit of oil on the plunger O-ring. And then that can sit on the end of there. Now, like we said earlier, I'm going to wind that bolt so that it's just coming onto the spring pressure just there. So I'll wind the lock nut in and that'll be our starting point. Right, this is going to be a palaver. I can already tell because we can't put a socket on it. We just got to push it and thread it at the same time. Whew. Right, that's that started. That was a bit of fun, I tell you. Right, just taking up a little bit of tension and that should do us. That's that one snugged up. That'll do. No mess made. Problem solved. Then that looks smart. Racy. So now we've got a way to monitor our oil pressure and set it correctly. Now, if for any reason we ever had a drop in oil pressure, we need a way to warn us. Enter MED with their adjustable oil pressure switch. Now, you may notice when I was showing you the routing of the capillary for the oil pressure gauge, there was an unusual aftermarket looking T-piece in the block. That's also from MED. That gives me the ability to remove the old oil pressure warning light, the red bulb on your dashboard, which if it ever illuminated, it's too late. Now with that T-piece, we can take the takeoff for our oil pressure gauge at source, so it's accurate, and then we've got an adjustable oil warning light. Let's have a little look. The original just sat in the block like that and had this single white brown cable going to it. And obviously with no oil pressure, it has continuity, and the red light on the dashboard illuminates. As soon as you generate oil pressure, it goes open circuit, breaks the circuit, and the bulb goes off. This one's slightly different. It needs its own ground. So I've taken a ground down off of the starter motor. It's got a little screw in the end, and it's adjustable between 15 and 150 PSI. So I'm going to set mine at 15, maybe 20 PSI. So if we're ever driving along and we lose oil pressure, this will then gain continuity and it will illuminate the red pressure warning light on the dashboard. Well, there we have it, a little bit of an insight into the lengths I've gone to be able to monitor and adjust oil pressure on our little Mini, which, as you may know if you're a regular viewer, has just had quite a bit of engine work done, including a camshaft and soon to be a ported head, which I've done myself. How hard can it be? Well, if you want to know, go and watch the previous videos in this series. We've still got a little bit of setting up to do on the oil pressure warning light and obviously the oil pressure relief valve as well. I'll go through that in another video when we're close to turning the key, which is not going to be far away. This cylinder head comes back, well not this one, the one that's away being machined, comes back from the machine shop hopefully in a week or so's time, and then we're going to deep dive into some measurements to make some modifications to that and then put it on the car and turn the key. So we're very, very close to being back on the road for the spring. Exciting times. Thanks always for watching, guys. See you soon.